All right, hey guys. So we finished up our Agar Diffusion lab today, and we were just talking about surface area to volume ratio. So let's talk about that. So a ratio is something that we compare. So we're comparing two numbers. In this case, it's surface area, right? So we're comparing this column right here, our surface area, to volume, which is this guy right here. Okay, and so a ratio is going to look something like this: 6:1, right? 6 is our surface area right here, and then 1 is our volume, which is right here. So this is how we compare surface area right here, volume right here. So let's go ahead and compare this, our 2 centimeter cube right here. So we would compare it 24 to 8. Okay. And something we need to keep in mind. So as we do something like this, we need to realize that this needs to be simplified. Okay, just like any other, a ratio can also be written as a fraction. So we need to simplify all fractions or even all ratios. And so what this would simplify down to is 3:1. And how do I get that? Well, we find the greatest common factor between these two. So we know that 8 goes into 8 at least once. So there's my 1. And then 8 goes into 24 3 times. So that's how I get my 3:1. Okay, so there's our true ratio right here. So we'll get rid of that guy. Next, we'll do the same thing. So we do our 54:27 ratio. And again, just like up above, I know that 27 fits into 54. 27 fits into 27 once. And then 27 fits into 54 twice, right? So now we have a 2:1 ratio. Okay, so what does this mean exactly? This means that our surface area to volume ratio is getting smaller. And so we can tell from our percent diffusion. So I wrote a couple ones that you guys would have had from your other lab. But our smallest one has the greatest percent diffusion, right? 87.5% of our small cell received the vinegar. And then as it got bigger, only 57.8% of our cell received vinegar, and then so on and so forth. The cell gets less efficient at diffusion as it gets bigger because there's less surface area for that volume. There's less surface area to that one volume. And again, here there's less surface area to that one volume. And so what does this mean? This means that volume, even though volume staying 1 over here, our volumes actually, as a cell grows or as anything grows, right? As anything grows, if this is my surface area and this is my volume grows at a faster rate than my surface area does as the cell grows. Okay, another way to look at this, if I show you this graph here. So if you guys can look, so this is the beginning of our chart here. Here's my surface area over here, and here's my volume over here. And so this blue part is my first part of my graph, but then I went ahead with a 4 centimeter cube, a 5 centimeter, a 6, and a 7 centimeter cube. And so this is all of their surface areas, and this is all their volumes. And so my blue right here is the surface area. And so as my surface area climbs, it climbs at this steady rate. But my volume, as my volume climbs, it begins to reach a point where it grows faster than my surface area. Okay, so my volume will grow, and now my cell is unable to feed the rest of the body because it's getting too big, too fast, and it can't bring enough food in or enough oxygen in or enough water in through the surface area or through its cell membrane in order to feed what's on the inside, to feed the volume. So in life and in biology, a big idea here is that volume is the enemy here. So we want to keep our surface area up as high as possible because a surface area is, your cell membrane is like a net. So the bigger your net is, as a fisherman or in anything, you can catch more fish or you can catch more of anything, which is good for life, right? They want to be able to collect as much food as possible. However, if I increase my surface area, then I also must increase my volume. Okay, so life here has to find this happy medium of where they can get as much surface area as possible while keeping volume as low as possible, and that can be really tough sometimes. So life actually has a couple hacks that it does. In some of our cells, like in our digestive tract, it comes up with these folds on top of the cell. So with these folds, It makes its cell membrane really tall and really short, really tall, really short. And essentially what they are is their fingers. And so this is all the surface area. Instead, if I had all my fingers together, here's my surface area on the outside of these cell, on the outside of my finger or the outside of the cell. If I spread my fingers apart, now the insides here become part of my surface area. Now the inside of my finger is able to absorb nutrients and food, the inside of these guys. So now I can count all of this. So now I have increased my surface area while keeping the volume, right? I still have 4 fingers here. I have 4 fingers here. So really my volume stays the same, but by splitting these guys apart, I've now increased my surface area, which is really good for my cell, right? So let's go to this lab here. In terms of maximizing diffusion, what cell is the most effective? What it was the most effective size cube that you tested, and that is my 1 centimeter cube, right? And then it asks here, why was this size the most effective at maximizing diffusion? What are the important factors that affect how materials diffuse into the cell? Well, we're looking again at this surface area to volume ratio. So my surface area, or the surface area, is much greater than the volume, which allows the cell to efficiently feed the rest of the cell. Okay, and you can kind of think of this, I think of this in terms of like a city. So cities grow over the years, right? And cities need to have food brought in. They need to have grocery stores. They need to have water brought in. Well, anyways, if just a little bit of water is brought in and just a little bit of food, well, soon the population will outgrow the food and the water, and then people will begin to starve and dehydrate. And that's essentially what will happen to a cell, is if it gets too big and it doesn't have enough surface area to bring in nutrients and oxygen and all that stuff, the cell will eventually end up dying, or it'll become very weak, or it just won't be able to function properly. If a large surface area is helpful to cell, why do cells not grow to be very large? This is because the volume will be too large for the cell to maintain. How does your body adapt to the surface area to volume ratio to help exchange for gases? So kind of a crazy fact here. Inside of our lungs, there's a lot of this gas exchange going on, right? I breathe in oxygen. That oxygen then is absorbed into my lung cells, and then my lung cells give it to my blood. My blood transports that all throughout my body to my other cells. My cells use up that oxygen, and then they have carbon dioxide, which is a waste. So then my carbon dioxide from my cells are then excreted into my blood. My blood then runs to my lungs, and then the CO2 is released into my lungs, and I breathe it out, right? And so we need this great surface area in order for this gas exchange to happen, for my oxygen to come in and my carbon dioxide to go out. And so actually a lot of human cells, or human lungs, we have the surface area of a tennis ball court kind of wrapped up in our lungs. So we have a bunch of surface area in our lungs, meaning we have a lot of thin tissues. There's a structure inside of our lungs called alveoli, and these guys are about 1 cell thick. Okay, and so 1 cell is really, 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 really small. And so in order to keep down on volume, we keep that tissue very, very, very thin in order to increase the surface area while keeping that volume down. Elephants kind of do this in a way. So they live in like these warm places, right? Well, they have ginormous ears that are super duper thin, right? Well, anyways, they need to get rid of all of this body heat. They have this huge body. They're generating a whole bunch of heat, so they need to get rid of this heat somehow. And so what happens is their blood runs to their ears, and then as their blood runs through their ears, they give off this heat. And then this heat's able to be given off into their ears because they're so thin and they're so big, they give off all of this heat. And so then this cooled blood runs back into their body, and it helps keep their body cool. So this one is, how does your body adapt to the surface area volume ratio? They have very thin tissues that increase the surface area while keeping the volume low. Why can't certain cells like bacteria get to the size of a small fish? Well, again, it kind of goes back up here to number 3. The volume will be too large for the cell to maintain. Right, its surface area will go up, but the volume will go up at a much faster rate. The volume will be too high for that surface area to take care of. And then finally, number 6. What are the advantages of a large organism to be multicellular? So we are multicellular. We have to be, right? And the reason why it works for us is because we are made up of a bunch of small, itty-bitty little cells. And all of these itty-bitty little cells get their nutrients through diffusion and other little processes we haven't gone over. But a lot of it's through diffusion. And so our blood vessels and things like that take the nutrients from our intestines out to all of our little cells, and they're able to diffuse through our small little cells, so they're able to do their own little functions. Now, if our body was one entire cell, and then you just put a slab of steak on my chest, and then my whole body from my chest all the way down to my toes and up to my head is supposed to get those nutrients just through diffusion, that's going to be a very difficult process. So we have a blood system, our cardiovascular system, that picks up those nutrients and then takes those to all of the tiny little bitty cells and allows for those guys to diffuse into the cells. Okay, so that's kind of to wrap up our Agar diffusion lab. So at the beginning of this lab, we had a question: is bigger better or smaller smarter? Smaller is smarter. Because these small cells have a small surface area or they have a large surface area to volume ratio, meaning that they have a very large surface area while keeping a very low volume to feed. Okay. And so that's a big takeaway from this lab. And so when cells, they go to divide, they do their cell division and mitosis, they grow and grow and grow. And so as they get bigger and bigger and bigger, they get less and less efficient at bringing in food and things like that. So once they reach this point where they're getting very inefficient, they know that they need to divide. So they will divide, and now their size is cut in half. And so this guy will begin to grow and grow and grow again until he gets so inefficient he can't take it anymore. He splits it, divides, goes through cellular division, and then he gets in half again. So he becomes really efficient as he's small, but then as he grows in size, that growing volume starts making him less efficient. Okay, so that's our wrap up on our Agar diffusion lab.